Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to FOL Marketplace. This is focused on Liberia. On FOL Marketplace, we discuss business, economic, finance, nothing but money. And so in today's edition, we're going to be looking at commercial banks in Liberia. I have with me joining us for the first time, all the way from North Carolina, Mr. Willie Dillon. Mr. Dillon, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Mr. John.
Also joining us, we have Mr. Chuchu Alex Jones, our banking and finance consultant. Mr. Jones, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Well, thank you, Dennis. Happy to be here.
We also have Mr. Ansu Dualo, the entrepreneur. Ansu, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much.
Joining us for the third time, we have Mr. Gabriel Carter. This man is a vice president. Mr. Vice President, welcome to Focus on Liberia. I will leave it like that so they will think you're vice president in a political system.
Thank you guys. Nice to meet you all, and thank you for having me.
Last but not the least, we have the former deputy minister, also professor and a career economist, Dr. George Gompu. Dr. Gompu, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, let's get straight into it. We have started a new series on Focus on Liberia where we're going to be looking at financial institutions. The first one, because we have a liquidity issue in Liberia, so the first one to start with is our commercial banks. So commercial banks in Liberia, we first want to do a little background of what they are, why are financial banks set up, what their purpose, what they do, how they're regulated. So we'll briefly go around the room to give us a little background on on central banks, what they are, and then we're going to go into the liquidity issue. So who's best to tell us all about this? Let's start with the professor. Dr. Gompu, let's start with, as we talk about central banks, I want you to start giving us a little background as to what they are, what are commercial banks, how they are different, and how they make their money.
Yeah, so the commercial banks have an important role in the economy. They are businesses mainly that are set up to manage money. They take deposits and make loans, and they are in business to make profit like any other business. However, they are really important to the economy because they help in the creation and the management of money in the economy. So because of that, they are very highly regulated, and their regulation comes from the central bank. And generally, these commercial banks, they use a lot of statistics in their approach to making money. So basically, in simple terms, when you make deposits with the commercial banks or some of their investors gave them money, which they then use to make money, they make their money by giving loans and by engaging other activities that leads to income. So the loans are a major source of commercial bank income. And so for each dollar you give to the commercial bank, they lend a large portion of it, and then they hold a section of it for regulation and should in case you want to get your money back. It's through what they do with the portion of the money that they give out as loans that they then make a profit, or they then make some income that they share with their depositors. And in the process of their operation, because people depend on them, that's where people keep their savings, that's where people generate some income on what they have put aside. The government is heavily involved in regulating them, and the government does that through the central bank. So the central bank in this context is the key player that basically license the commercial banks. It decides who will participate in the financial sector or not. In addition to regulation, the central banks are responsible for making what is referred to as monetary policy in terms of how much money will be in circulation in the economy, and to study how the amount of money that is in circulation affect the rest of the economy, how it affects investment. And there are other financial institutions that operate as well. So we get into more of that as the show proceeds.
Okay. Still going around the room on the background. Let me go to Alex. And Alex, in addition, Dr. Gompo mentioned about loans. In America, we look at mortgages and credit cards. So that's how central commercial banks make their money. In Liberia, we don't have those. So in your background, a little more about the commercial banks.
Well, you said we do have commercial banks in Liberia. So we have about nine of them. There's one called, I think, Afroland First Bank, Access Bank, Echo Bank, GM Bank, Guarantee Trust, Global Bank of Liberia, International Bank, LBDI, and UBA. Those are all commercial banks. So they make their money by borrowing from the central bank, borrowing from their depositors, people who put money in the bank. They take their money and they loan it to other people or businesses, and they make an interest, what is called an interest margin. If they can borrow at a higher rate than what they pay the depositor, they make money. They also do services like Western Union. They do letter of credits, lines of credits. So that's what we have in Liberia. But there are several other kinds of banks, like investment banks and industrial banks and things like that, that perhaps we can go into as we go forward. You even have mutual banks, you have credit unions, savings and loans banks. You have also retail banks, such as what we have in America, that issues credit to retailers, issue credit cards and things like that. So different kinds of banks. But we do have commercial banks in Liberia.
Mr. Dillon, just give us a little more. We're still talking background. Let's look at the history of banking in Liberia, and anything other thing that you want to add.
So the Central Bank of Liberia was established in 1999. So prior to that, there was the National Bank of Liberia that was established in 1974. That was during the Talbot administration. But prior to that, there was no central bank in Liberia. The government held its funds in a bank known as Bank of Monrovia. And that bank was actually owned by Firestone. And the actual first indigenous commercial bank in the country is a bank known as Bank of Liberia, which is owned, established by a man named Romeo Horton, which is one of my heroes, He also played a pivotal role in the establishment of the African Development Bank and ECOWAS also. So he established the first indigenous bank in the country, Bank of Liberia. It was that was in the 60s. And the vice president at the time, who later on became President Talbot, was a major shareholder in that bank as well. But yes, so prior to that, there was no central banking in Liberia. Firestone pretty much handled the finances of the republic, and so for to a large extent, Liberia is seen as what is known politically as a banana republic. So I hope that answered the question.
Sure, definitely. Let me go to Dualo. Give us more background on banking or the commercial banks.
Okay, I'll tell you like this. Like I always say, whenever I'm talking about things when I say relates to Liberia, I love to speak in practical terms, not in financial terms, because my goal is for people to fully understand what we are talking about. So I see myself as a practicalist. I will keep saying that. I want you to understand the role of a bank as it relates to the central bank in Liberia. Okay, there's a bunch of services that Dr. Gompo just talked about, Alex talked about, that is provided by these commercial banks. Well, primarily, The commercial bank provide financial services to better people's lives and to build wealth. Foundationally, that's what they do. They provide huge services when it comes to the commercial banks. We're talking about business loan, checking account, savings account, merchant services. There's something that's happening right now in Liberia. People go borrow money from the bank, go to China, use the collateral, use their land and the property. The bank provide that. But foundationally, they provide treasury services. But I want you to understand the relationship between commercial bank and the central bank. The central bank in Liberia, all the banks in Liberia, they are literally the depository of the value of the country. So if you truly want to know the value of your country, you will know that the bank will have that number of what the country is worth to some extent. They are depository of what we are worth in that instance. So in practical terms, the central bank is like a husband. The commercial bank are like his wives. The central bank will bring in money. The commercial bank behave like the wives that run the home, provide great services for the children, build the home, make sure that they establish a future, make sure there is food on the table, a bunch of stuff. So the commercial bank serves as a point where the central bank looks and says, listen, I brought this much money in. How can we properly manage this money for the development of this country? So the commercial bank serves in that capacity as a manager for the money that the central bank has brought into the country. Let's look at it from that standpoint.
So Mr. Dualu, are you giving credence to polygamy because you're talking about many wives?
This is something our people understand because we have to speak from the standpoint what our people understand. They understand polygamy. And
so our people understand polygamy.
But yes.
All right. No, that was nice. Beautiful. Let me go to you, Mr. Carter, and let's talk about the regulatory part of it. What are some of those laws on the book? How are they regulated? Because if these guys are the wives, as Mr. Dualu said, they are the one managing the day-to-day running of the home. Somebody got to be looking at them before they do their own thing.
Exactly. And that's, I think Dr. Gompu and Dualu did touch on the regulatory body part of the, commercial banks. In Liberia, just like every bank study here in the USA, there's slew of regulations. You talk about, the capital reserve requirements to make sure that they have a certain amount of money. You talk about the credit risk, the operational risk, the stress testing. There's slew of regulation that govern those banks. Even there's consumer protection regulations that make sure that general people that are going to borrow money, that they're giving credit fairly and they're not being discriminated against, right? So there are a lot of regulations on the books, but the point here is I don't know if as effective as banks are regulated here, I don't know if those regulations are being carried out, right? So, I think the next thing I want to go to, that segue into what we're going to talk about next, right? There's a regulation that actually monitors the liquidity amount in every banks, right? To make sure that if you have a bank, there should be a certain amount of liquidity in your banks, right? If the central bank was doing its role, we wouldn't be at this point because they would know that these banks are running out of money and there got to be an immediate intervention. So there are a slew of regulations in Liberia that govern commercial banks. And even to the extent of who audits them, right? Like over here, we have the PwC, the, Ernst & Young, that, audit all these banks, right? In Liberia, we do have the same thing too. We have a regulation on the books that these banks can bring in outside auditors, right? Even though it has to be approved by the central banks, but you have that ability to do it, to say there's an outside body that comes in to say, hey, let's check your books. Let's make sure that your stress test is in place to make sure that you have enough liquidity. Even things as cybersecurity or emerging risks, certain risks that we don't even know about yet that are out there, to make sure that you're prepared that when these things happen, you'll be in position to actually weather those storms, So we have all of these regulations on the books, but I think what actually puzzles me is whether they do get implemented to the extent that they need to be. Yeah.
Any addition on the background before we go into the liquidity issue? Delon, do you know if any of these things have been implemented, or Dr. Gompu, do you know if the regulations and who's doing what when it comes to how things are done in Liberia? Let me start with Delon on the regulatory and the auditing and even let's include the written of these commercial banks?
Well, as far as I know, I don't see how the regulation of these banks are being handled properly, because I mean, what we're discussing now in regards to liquidity issue in the country is a direct manifestation of that.
Yeah.
So I would have to come out to say that no, it's not being handled properly, and now it's affecting the economy of the country.
Dr. Gompo, you work there at the finance ministry.
Yeah, I want to differ to some extent with the analogy regarding the men with a man with so many wives relationship between a commercial bank and central bank. These banks, these commercial banks come into business. There are capital requirements before they can be allowed into the industry. So they have to show that they are investors that are coming to do business. They have to have a minimum amount of money. I don't know of any, traditional Liberian husbands who would say, well, the woman has to have X number of dollars before I can marry her, but so these are the kind of requirements. There are requirements like our brother Gabriel referred to. There are requirements that these banks have to be, especially the capital, adequacy.
Yeah.
You have to bring a certain number of millions of dollars before they can allow you to even play in the field. And they're supposed to have their own money. So the government, they're not coming to manage the central bank money. In fact, when you are a commercial bank and you are depending on the central bank money as a source of fund, is in the bank regulatory and examination field, is considered that is considered as a red flag. So if you take Dwalu's analogy, then if you are this woman who always asks your husband for when you have a need, then it means that it means you got trouble and you need to be, questioned as to whether they should divorce you or get rid of you. So I want to, because that analogy sounds like there's a subordinate, superior relationship, and we don't want to reflect that in our new, modernized culture. But I mean, with respect to regulation, those are the issues there to really examine. Is the central bank capable, human capital wise, and are they really doing their work? And it's difficult for the central bank sometimes to do its work when you have a situation where the government is borrowing, from these commercial banks through the central bank. Because some of the commercial banks are saying they're not giving customers money because they can't get their money from the central bank. So, so I think the regulatory area is something that we need to critically examine.
Yeah, and going back to Dwalu's example, if you are the husband and you're always borrowing from your wife, then you have a problem. But Alex, you always you always come out strong on these commercial banks. So give us a little, who own these banks and why is that a problem? We always talk about that, these commercial banks.
But thank you for for recognizing that I'm a big critic of the Liberian banking system, the Liberian commercial banks. I think they are poorly managed. Of the 9 banks, only 2 banks are run by Liberians, and that's the International Bank, which used to be the former ITC Bank, International Trust Company, that was converted into a commercial bank now called International Bank. And then LBDI, of course, is a government-owned bank, practically for development set up by the IFC and the government. The reason I say that is because, I mean, everyone on this panel will agree, if you don't have a strong banking system or banks in a country, you don't have an economy. So we all agree to that. So if you look at Liberian banks, as Gabriel was mentioning, there's very little regulations. At the whole entire Ministry of Finance, you have no regulatory department that monitors the bank. That would be comparable to the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department in America, not giving any supervision to banks in America, or the FDIC or whatnot. And if you look at the Central Bank of Liberia, which is the main regulator, because you have several regulators, there's a division called Banking and Payment System. And they say banking and currency, payment system, treasury operation, microfinance. That's it. Who are those people? We don't know them. We don't hear them. I've never heard a Liberian bank got fined. I'm just looking here here in the U.S. for instance, since we copy everything from the U.S. Since 2012, the regulators have fined, including the Justice Department, U.S. private banks over $25 billion. JP Morgan alone was fined $25 billion, okay, for not following certain regulations and so forth. People have their money there. The whole system in Liberia is dependent upon the commercial banks and the activities. Gabriel again mentioned cybersecurity. Right now, Liberia can be hacked. These banks do not have the technical skills to protect people, money, and transaction moving in or outside the country. And all the banks president, including the foreign banks president, they are not notable people in the banking community. Nobody knows how you put your money, or the country will depend on individuals coming from Ghana. You don't know their background. You don't know who they are. And they come to Liberia and they set up these banks. And usually they set up this bank for some particular transaction, because they're really not giving Liberian loans and building Liberian companies and supporting Liberian industry. So what the hell are they doing there? So my thing is, because we have very poor regulators, people at the central bank and the finance who don't understand banking, and they don't want to understand banking. So basically they just left it with a bunch of people who just do their own thing. And now we have the problem now where people can get a cash. Then the things we've been talking 2 years ago, strengthening the banks, have good regulators, have good bank president. There should be no bank president in Liberia or deputy president of Liberia who is not a Liberian. Liberia is the only country where all your banks are run by foreigners. Okay, that's a national security issue. They make him pack his bag tomorrow and leave the country and go to another place and you never find him. It's happened before in the world. So it's a serious matter. And that's why I'm so critical of it. We need to fix it. We need to divorce it from politics. We need to get the best. Any one of these people on this planet today could run a bank in Liberia and do a better job at it. So it's not that we don't have the people, but everybody wants to talk politics. Everybody wants to stay away from it. And I'm glad that we come to the realization that our little money there is not safe.
Thank you. One problem that is, even if you send your family or loved one money in Liberia now, they said there's no money. Dylan, let me start with you. There's a currency shortage. The banks, when they see people line up, there's a friend who sent $1,000 and the bank said, we can only give you $200. We don't have money. There's currency shortage. Why is this happening, Mr. Dylan?
Well, as far as what I understand, what we're faced with in Liberia is a currency crisis. And the currency crisis usually comes about from when the central bank fails to peg the currency in. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Peg the currency in the proper fashion, that of the floating currency. So that would be the Liberian dollar to that of the US dollar in the proper fashion. So if they're not pegging it properly, that brings about the currency crisis, which may lead to a shortage of currency on the market. But that comes down to the main mandate of any central bank in any country. We're supposed to deal with interest rates, monitor interest rates based on the flow of the economy. And you have to also determine how much money is in the system. At times, take money out of the system, and at times bring money into the system based on the ebb and flow of market forces. So I would say the problem comes down to the fact that they're not doing their job. It may be a problem as far as they don't have the proper manpower to get the job done, or they just asleep on the wheel.
Mr. Dualo, we have a problem here, and we'll go around the room to see why this is happening. Mr. Dualo?
Sorry, I had on mute for a second. Let's first understand what causes these things to happen. Okay, the solutions are there. People wanting to find what the solutions are. Number one, normally, when there is a sudden volatility in exchange rate, currency crisis will happen. That's number one. Number two, when the people who are making the monetary decisions in the country refuses to embrace what this market presents and try to counter it. Basically, what I'm trying to say, like every time I talk, I try to make an analogy. My analogy may not be entirely holistic, considering every aspect of what I'm alluding to. But what I'm trying to make is make sure our people fully understand what we're trying to get to when I make the polygamous analogy that I was trying to make here. But this is what's happening. You have a central bank that's trying to run a location as though it's a Western country. We have to first tailor our condition, our experiences to local experience. You cannot employ U.S. devices or U.S. solutions to Liberia's problem. So number one, we have a currency that we do not control. So whenever there is a volatility, it's going to affect us more. The central bank makes these policies. They control the money supply in the country. They determine how much money we have in the country. They determine the bank reserve, the bank ratio, they call it. How much money is remaining in the bank. They determine operational adjustments in the country. How much money can be loaned out to these commercial banks in Liberia. What's happening in Liberia is a lack of control. Now, there's another thing happening people don't understand. There is an artificial suppressing of the currency in Liberia. Let me explain what that means. You have people currently running the financial sector who believe in order to stabilize the exchange rate when we have no production, we have absolutely nothing. Every time, okay, in 2014, something happened in the merchant markets around the world. There was an outflow of capital from poor country into richer country. The reason was we produce absolutely nothing, so we have to buy everything. So the more raw material we need, like for instance, everybody in Liberia now wants a vehicle. When we were growing up, I barely knew more than 3 people that had a vehicle. Everybody wanted the good goose. In fact, there are people in Liberia right now ordering from eBay in Liberia. So there's a massive outflow of currency out of the country. All of that is increasing the burden on local people. The central bank has no mechanism to control how the currency is being flown out of the country. What's the stabilizing ingredient needed to employ to do this? And another thing, you guys mentioned about the commercial banks. The commercial court in Liberia has not been working. There are 3 judges at each commercial court in Liberia. So if we have a business litigation in Liberia, you go before a commercial judge. Most of the commercial judges are corrupt. It's been proven. We have, for instance, Edith Mape Morgan. There was a guy in Liberia called Brochus. This guy started a small business in Liberia with a Dutch firm. The Dutch firm would import certain material into the country, and he would serve as a distributor because he has the market to do that, and he would get a certain percentage. After a while, this Liberian man, local Liberian man, had $3 million in his own bank in Liberia. The Dutch company tried to take this money from him. He went to the commercial court. The account was frozen, which is a good thing to do when there is a litigation until you determine who actually owns this money. While the case was going on, the judges were stealing the man's money. How are you supposed to buttress and improve the commercial happiness in the country when the commercial court that should serve as a stabilizer, regulatory body oversight, were literally stealing the man's money? In fact, they stole all the man's money, $3 million out of his account. This is the issue we're talking about. So people are not going to keep the money in the local banks. They are going to export the monies out. And when they do that, it causes shortages in the country.
Mr. Carter.
Yeah, I think everybody's singing the same song here. And it's what I've always been saying is that it might sound too radical, but I think the central bank needs to be either dismantled or reconfigured to really fit to really fit what it actually is supposed to do in Liberia, right? I mean, we've talked about the same thing. Like, not only does the outflow of money causes our problem, right? We have banks in Liberia that are not. Everybody is centralized right in Monrovia, right? These are important banks that are like they're key to the economic activities in our country, right? In the USA, since we model everything after the USA. In the USA, there's no bank that can operate in any community. I think Alex alluded to that, but he made up not going into it, right? There's no bank that can operate in any community, just take deposit money, but then go make interest rate loans to other places, right? If you're in that community, you're supposed to, if you're taking deposit money from that community, you're supposed to be making bank loans in that very community, right?
Absolutely.
But we're not having that. So we have Liberian people that are depositing, the one that feel comfortable to deposit their money in the bank, they deposit their money in the bank. And as Alex said, most of the banks are not owned by Liberians or they're not managed by that. The money are being taken out, right? We don't control the level of money, the type of, the amount of money that leaves the country, right? There's so we don't track that. The other thing the central bank doesn't do is, I don't know. Again, it goes back to the tools, having the tools to monitor what we're supposed to do. They don't have. I don't know if they have the tools to monitor the supply of money in the economy, right? If you don't monitor the supply of money in the economy, you will guess anything that you want to do. You will figure that, hey, because the interest rate is high, we don't have enough money. So there are challenges in our country, right? One of my biggest problems that I usually tell people is that we have so many people at the central bank, but we rely so much on everything we do from the IMF. If the IMF says this, that means that's so. We have people in the central bank. You can tell me we can't put out a quality report that gauges the pulse of the economy to say, these are the sectors that are performing well. These are the sectors that are not performing well. This is the amount of money supply in the industry, in the economy. This is what we need. These are the sectors that are underperforming. These are the sectors that need loans to be funded. We don't have that. Over here, we have what we call, if everybody, I know you guys, some of you guys work in banking, we have what we call the beige book, right? It's a quarterly report from all the central banks in the United States, all 12 of them, right? Every quarter it comes out. Bank chew those things because it gives you a good pulse on the economy, right? From sector to sector, industry to industry, even on the banking themselves, right? We don't have that. So the entire banking sector in Liberia is just a guessing game. We can pick it apart and tell you everything that's wrong with it, but it's just, to me, it's just a guessing game that people are just playing in our country, and it frustrates everybody. You can see it from everybody on this panel, and every Liberian you talk to, they will tell you, we have a country that's a serious political risk. You have a country that don't even have money in the country. That's a serious political risk, right? That could be an uprising. I know we take it lightly and people make joke of it, but that could be, people could get frustrated and go do bank runs, right? But these are the things we sit here, we complain about it, but I think it's time that Liberians actually need to be sitting down and say, okay, we can complain and come up with a solution. There got to be some kind of radical change or plans in place to actually make sure that we see the country that we want and have the financial sector that we want in the country.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are on FOL Marketplace, where we discuss business, economics, and finance. Right now, we're talking about the shortage of money in Monrovia, in Liberia. Dr. Gompo, still on the issue, what's the source of this problem?
Well, I think we've discussed the source of the problems before, and it's always a good thing to even discuss the sources of the problem before the problems occur, because when you listen keenly, you can prevent some of the problems.
Yes.
So earlier in the year, we talked about the quality of governance. We talk about the issue of credibility, that the people who lead need to have adequate skills and adequate training in certain areas. And so many Liberians just don't listen. So many Liberians basically chose their leaders on the basis of love, without consideration of what is the job this leader is supposed to do. And apparently this leader is also choosing the leaders in the banking industry on a basis of love. And so if you choose the central governor, the central bank governor on a basis of love, or someone who doesn't bring the adequate preparation on monetary policy, on regulation, and on visionary thinking to anticipate some of these problems, then right away everybody gets scared. The people who understand how the industry works get afraid. So in general, one of the things that is happening in Liberia, I think, is a confidence crisis. People got, all of these things that have been happening. Whenever something happens, for example, a spike in crime, people get afraid. The economy is shrinking. That report comes, people get afraid. And when people get afraid, what happens? They want to hold on to their money. See? They want to hold on to their money. They want to take their money out of the banking system to hold on to their money because they don't know what's going to be happening. So one of the things that have been happening, and the 2019 report show it, the currency in circulation spiked up, meaning that people were taking their money from the banks.
Yep.
You see? So then with all these kind of things, the crime rate goes up, 4 auditors dying, this dying, whatsoever. You see? Inflation. Okay, so then there's, within the economic context, there's something called the demand for money, which tells you how much money the public wants to hold. Okay? And that is influenced by the inflation rate, it's influenced by some of the issue of uncertainty, and so many other variables. So the demand for money has shot up. People want to hold on to their money, and the money they're holding on to, they're not holding on to it in the banking system. They're taking their money out in currency. Okay? The last report showed that the amount of currency that was in circulation in 2019 was around $20.8 billion. It went up by about 10% from the previous period. And they've been, driving up over time. M1 money supply also shot up. M2 money supply also shot up. Mm-hmm. So what is happening now is that there's almost like a parallel banking system or parallel financial system operating in Liberia because of the confidence crisis. Business people are no longer taking their collections to the bank. Okay? They're trying to get their money out of the banking system. Mm-hmm. And we just explained to you that the commercial banks operate on what is called a fractional banking system. The money you put in the bank, they don't have everything in cash waiting for you because they have to make money. So when they get all that money.
Dr. Gompo, let me push you a little bit because people are saying these are age-old problems. It didn't start today because you talk about, having the wrong people in or electing the wrong people who turn around and appoint the wrong people or people not qualified. This is as old as my grandfather.
Yeah, but it's as old. But again, we're looking now at the degree.
Okay.
Okay, you're looking at the degree of the problem. So if the problem is old, but then it's not reducing, it's getting worse. Okay. So what is happening now? I mean, I talked to, my daughter, and she was telling me what exactly part of what is happening in the system, which makes a lot of sense that maybe the ordinary person can understand. The average person on the street, the money changer on the street now, does not go to the bank with their money. They go to, there's an ethnic group there that basically have their own banking system. So all the money exchange boys go to these people. The market woman who used to take her daily sales and whatever to her account, okay, so that she can compile that money there until, or maybe keep that money there until she's ready to import goods, does not go to the bank anymore. Because when you put your money in the bank, they will tell you system down every day. So now they got the people who these money exchangers go to make their exchanges instead of going to banks are the places now where the market women are taking their money.
Okay.
You see, and then when they get ready to import their goods, they go to those people. And those people too, you would think that they are taking, saying that they're holding on to hundreds of millions of dollars, like $1 billion. You would think that will put that money in their commercial bank. No, they're not going to the commercial bank. They're keeping their money in their houses. So all those stores you see, they now have their own vaults. So how is the system going to function?
Wow. Alex, let me bring you in. Sometimes I like how you describe these things because of the passion. People have been saving money, putting money under their mattress for a long time. And most of what we talk about, maybe is this happening in Monrovia, Ganta, and other parts of the country. But people in Dodoka, my hometown, they don't even care. There's no banks there. When my uncle used to go to Greenville for for their salary because he's a teacher. There's a Lebanese man there called Sami Tofi. So Sami Tofi was their bank. If there is no money, he gave you soap, he gave you. So these issues are old. Dr. Gompu said they are getting worse. What's your take on what is causing this currency shortage? And right after you, we come to the solution. People want to hear what we can do.
Well, it's because of bad economic and financial managers in Liberia. I think everyone has said it. We've been talking about people like American, people like Gafuyan. And most of the times, the stooges around them think it's personal. But it's not. So the banking problem in Liberia, with the 9 banks in Liberia and what, 7 or 8 of them are owned by foreigners. Liberians have no stake or equity in these banks. I was looking at UBA Bank. 98% of the shares are non-Liberians. Can you believe that? How can you be a finance minister and allow that? Why, you think there's not Liberians who want to make money? So when we say these things, it's because we politicize everything in Liberia, and we forget about what's important. I sent an article just on December 22nd that says U.S. Embassy warns travelers of difficulties in getting cash from banks in Liberia. This is a disgrace. Then you get somebody like Buffalo Chamber, who happens to be, I think, the speaker, saying that it's because of businesses hurting money. It just shows the level of financial ignorance people like him has. If there's no cash at the bank, what does that have to do with businesses? Who should put the money in a bank that is poorly regulated? I wouldn't. I would take every penny out tomorrow morning. I have friends here who are trying to open business in Liberia, can't even get the money out of the country. So the problem here is all our leaders. Why Darius Dillon is not talking about this? Because he doesn't know. Okay? Why Comis is not talking about this? Why Boga is not talking about this? We've been talking about this for 2 years. That the banks in Liberia it's about to collapse. I wrote a paper on LBDI and how that bank is just useless. You got Davis there. This man is not even a banker. He's been there for 10 years. So Liberians are not serious. Everybody wants to be president, and nobody wants to be a technician. The reason why people like me and people like Gabriel and people like Dr. Gompu and Ansu can come and Willie can come on this show and express themselves, because we don't need to get a job from the government. We don't need to work for any political party. And that's what the problem is that the people who are managing at the central bank, they put in the political people there. The political people know nothing. And who on this panel or any real professional will want to go and work with those kinds of people? Because where we come from, if Dr. Gompo is working for me and he doesn't do his job, I will fire him. And if I'm working for Ansu and I don't do my job, he should fire me. But these people don't operate like that. They operate like a political party. So as a result, that the banks will go down, your money will be taken out gradually, sent to Ghana, Nigeria, and else places, and Liberia will continue to be the poorest country until we get a real serious person who can go in there, like Gabriel said, you need to dismantle the whole central bank and the Ministry of Finance and rebuild a structure that can really promote, like you said, in your town. We need to decentralize the banking system. We need to have an investment unit in each bank that will invest in local products and local people. And you need to have real competent managers and bank presidents. Not because you open a bank, that means you got to run it. You have to be a person with experience, credibility, and a Liberian, lastly. So that's the problem, and I think we're all seeing the same thing.
Yeah. So how is this impacting the economy? Let me start with Gabriel this time before I go to Dylan. How is this impacting the economy? Yes, we know that if you don't have money, you can't buy anything. So my people in Bannersville are not able to go and get something to eat. But let's talk about trade. Let's talk about investment, people's lives, and everything else. What's the impact of this money shortage?
All right. So this is very simple, right? So the economy, every economy is just like a well-oiled machine, right? You just keep putting oil, the wheel will continue to spin, right? Liberia economy is no different from any other economy, right? So the way the government makes money is by allowing businesses, to open, to pay tax revenue. The tax revenue are being used, to fund the minimum, to fund, the the basic necessity of the citizen, right? So with the shortage of money in the country, you can't fund business needs, right? If somebody want to open a business, to go to a bank, they won't be able to get capital, right? If I want to open say a restaurant or some kind of investment firm, I have capital injection that I'm going to put, let's say 25%, and I'll come to the bank or central or whatever, UBA or LBDI, and say, hey, I want the other 25%, right? Because they don't have the minimum money in that account, they won't be able to limit the money that I need, right? How does that impact the economy? If you're not opening enough businesses to fund, to collect enough tax revenue to fund your minimum requirements or your expenditure or your infrastructures, what happened is that we see exactly the same thing that is happening right now, right? Where we have budget shortfall every year, right? Where we have to go rely on the IMF to pretty much fund our basic budget to operate our economy. So some of the things that I think Alex talked about, right? To solve this problem, you have to require the banks in our country to have at least maybe 3 or 4 branches in each county, right? We have on a bank problem. We have majority of the population that don't put their money in the bank. If you don't put money in the bank, how do you think those banks is going to have money to make out the loans that they need to make to businesses, right? That's one. Two, give me 1 second here. Right, to decentralize the bank. We don't need every bank situated in Monrovia. We have all the major commercial banks right in Monrovia, right? They just have these little huts, places in those counties, which are just pretty much there to serve as money transfer, right? So those are the things that kind of impact the economy. That's got us in this place that we are. That's stopping us from growing.
DeLong, what's the impact? DeLong, unmute, please.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Gabriel, for your point of view. From my perspective, I look at, like you said, the economy is heavily impacted by the government, right? But the government has these levers that they can use in order to influence the economy to go either if it's overheating to slow it down or if it's slowing down to pick it up. And those levers are called, fiscal policy, monetary policy. Fiscal policy is finance ministry. The laws they make for taxing and spending. And through taxes and also spending, the way in which they spend money can actually push the economy in that direction. So with the central bank now, you have the fiscal policy where they have the interest rates and they have, the flow of money in the economy. But I think that, as we said earlier, the government as a whole, central bank more specifically, is not in tune with the ebbs and flow of the economy, right? So I think that we need more of what is called window guidance. And window guidance is something that was used in Japan after the war in order to direct the economy specifically towards specific industries that they need to grow in order to have the economy jumpstart. How is that done? The central bank can guide the loans in the country, all the loans that the money that the bank has to loan out. They can tell them which industry to invest in order to make sure that that specific industry is blossoming before they focus on other things. But the bank is not working with the economy in such a way. I believe it is not working with the economy in that way because they don't have the type of manpower to even actually know how the economy is growing. They make these reports, but they're not actually reports that can tell you that the economy as a whole is in tune with the financial system. We don't have that in our country. And I think that if we don't have that, and you don't have control of the fiscal policy in the country or bring the fiscal policy in connection with the economy, we can't move forward.
And so let's talk about solution. One solution that people that, will come to mind is, hey, there's money shortage, why don't we print money? Second, IMF give us money. Those look like good solutions.
I want to say one thing before I mention the solutions.
Sure.
First of all, Alex mentioned something. No one individual in Liberia has the capability to hold money. It's impossible. It has to be done on a very large scale. And the reason is due to confidence. Number two, you have to understand something. You talk about what are some of the issues happening in the country. Like I said, I always like to do practical, because when you speak in practical terms, people understand you. There's a reason why there's a lot of things happening in the country. I will use myself as an example. I decided to build a commercial building in Liberia that will cost me over $1 million. The commercial building is about 80% complete right now. And it's a 15-apartment building. I had 34 men working on this building. I had to suspend it because I cannot get my clock cash to flow easily the way I want it to flow. These are some issues that's happening in the country. But as you are talking, I jotted down few solutions for the country. If you give me a chance, I will go ahead and explain some of them to you. Number one, to address the liquidity issue in the country, you have to do several things. But these are some of the issues here. Number one, decrease your reserve ratio. Now, what that means is every bank in Liberia has to have, let's assume $3 million on hand. If you decrease that to $2 million, for example, temporarily to adjust something, there'll be more cash infused into the country. Number two, you have to lower your import of certain commodity. Why are we importing chicken in Liberia? Why are we importing rubber band? Why are we importing slippers? There's a bunch of stuff. You want to keep the money in the country. Number three, you want to increase import. That's another thing we can discuss. Number four, you want to increase confidence. That the Gumpu spoke about this is crucial and important. There's a bunch of ways you can increase confidence. People will speculate. You have to understand the way the market works is people that are operating within the confines of the market, three things happening to them. They understand the speculation factor of it. If I'm selling cassava in relay, I know on which day people buy cassava. I can project all my cassava. If I know my cassava come after 12 o'clock, I'm not going to sell as much if my cassava come before 8 o'clock. You have to understand these little mechanisms that control the economy. Now, Dr. Gombo also spoke about technocrats. You have to get people that understand. Look, the economy is a massive machine. The very people that own that machine must understand the intricacies of that economy. You have to hire technocrats. I understand somebody brings you the power. You have to give them jobs. But there are certain jobs you don't just give to anybody because it requires a foundational preparedness to do that. Look, I've worked in finance close to 20 years. At the very highest level. I understand everything about finance. I'm not saying I know everything, but there is a basic preparedness that you must have to do certain jobs. Certain jobs, you don't just go learn it on the job. It takes time. You have to understand that. And one of the most things you have to do, adequate regulatory oversight. Yes, another thing I'll tell you. The central bank has to understand its role. And I have a serious doubt that the central bank fully understands this role. Plenty of things. Look, not just printing money. Now back to your question about, let's just go print money. Let's ask ourselves a question. Why do people print money? Why do governments print money? The money get rotting. We have to print new ones. You are not printing new money. You're just replacing those money. Okay? The central bank decides through some monetary, the economy is expanding. We need no money in the economy. It's a Liberian economy expanding. We know it's been contracting with complete certainty. So we're not about printing money. Now, we know there are certain reserves that the Liberian government has. Now, the Gombu said we have about 20.8 billion Liberian dollars in circulation. Have they accounted for that money? So you cannot go cold tabagi when you don't have your dry meat. You don't get kittere, you don't get raw oil. You cook in the tabagi, that your water, you cooking. You have to find those ingredients to make tabagi before you can start making tabagi. So to print money, let's find out why do we print money. Those things are not happening. If you try to print money, this is what you're going to do. When you overburden the society with additional cash that is not needed, it causes inflation. Inflation causes high prices to rise. A bunch of factors have to be answered before you can print money. Are we answering this question? To my last point before another person comes in, the government said the $16 billion did not get missing. Where is it? Let's quantify this. Let's answer these questions. It got nothing to do with my job. And Alex mentioned something. Look, give people with the expertise a chance. Ali keep talking about the agricultural bank. This is a massive big deal. Brother Wendy did say, look, our locations outside of Monrovia, you have to bring them into the economy. We're talking about a $2.2 billion economy. We can literally double that economy in less than 5 years if you bring the entire country into the fold. Mm-hmm. There are ways we can do that. Last week, I told you guys about how we can create 250,000 jobs, how we can create another 40,000 jobs. And let's have a show about it. You can create those jobs in 6 months. And I can show you how. But they will not listen. It got nothing to do with politics. It's about improving the livelihood of our people. If you don't improve the livelihood, the economy will remain stagnated. It's not magic. It really is not magic. You can learn all the book, but most importantly, you must tailor our decision to local conditions. You cannot take a Boston method in a developed country and you go and say, oh, in Boston, we do debit and credit. This is ridiculous. There's a lot of things we have to do, John.
Dr. Gompo, you work in the system. Dualu is saying they're not listening.
Okay, well, maybe this will be my last comment as my time has run down.
All right.
So let me
provide your solution, and then we can
make those comments. Yeah, so basically we lay out the problem. I said they're rooted in a confidence crisis. Lack of confidence leads to uncertainty. Uncertainty leads to fear, and it just leads to taking money out of the system. And that's what maybe the legislator is referring to when you talk about hoarding. The people have to make a living, and the system does not work. The banking system is not working for them. So they're creating their own mini banks or parallel banks. You know, they're still operating, but it's outside the system. So basically, like the impact is that it's slowing down the economy. The shrinkage of the economy will increase. The negative growth rate we talked about it last time will get bigger because, like the example that Doalu gave, okay, he's doing construction, multi-million-dollar construction project. He's forced to slow down because he got no access to his funds. That means those employees that were dependent on that work are not going to get paid. If they're not getting paid, it means they're not going to pay their kids' tuition. Yep. That means the teacher who's teaching at that school, his pay will be slowed down too. That means the janitor pay will be slowed down. And economic vibrancy depends on activity. It depends.
And Dr. Gompo, to add to that, if that janitor goes home, he gets angry, he's going to beat his wife.
Okay. You see? Yeah. So, right. Yeah. No, I mean,
more his 7 wives.
Yeah, and more. And then you got more crisis because people get angry. And when people get angry, they're not spending as much as they should spend. So that's just one man. Now think about it across the whole nation. And that's just one sector, construction. So this is happening in other areas, restaurants. It's happening in agriculture. You talk about your, growing up in the village and what have you. Well, yeah, the people did not need banks because they had a Lebanese store or they had some store where they could go and cash their salary or take a loan until their salaries come. But since that guy now does not have, access to loans to fund his business, if he doesn't have his own big vault with money in there, then he's going to now slow down in giving loans to people. He's not going to cash people check anymore. And if he doesn't cash people check, they will not be spending. So the thing is that then all activities slow down. As the activities slow down, the whole economy shrinks, which means less and less employment, and it just leads to more and more problems. So the thing is that the leadership has to swallow some bitter pills. That this thing is about getting a job done. It's not about love anymore. Yeah. Because you don't get the job done for those people to have and feed the funds to feed their family. They can love you. They're going to kick you out.
Thank you.
You see? So look at what's happening in America here. Why you think Biden is making all these big appointments and they put it on TV and all these things? Okay? You're appointing, bringing who's going to be the head of the treasury? Who's going to be the deputy treasurer? And then they will list where did you have worked before, what's their experience, what kind of school they went to. All of those things are helping to inject confidence. You see, as those confidence occur, those people leave their money in the system so that the money can circulate. What's happening in Liberia will happen here. If people start, if the confidence in the banking system decline, if every one of us here went to the bank today to get all of our money out, the bank would not have enough money to give to everybody.
Right.
So their whole operation is dependent on people making the assumption that everything will be fine. And
Dr. Gompo, before you leave, if this trends continue and is not reversed, what do you see 5 years down the road?
Well, I mean, at the rate it's going, something has to happen. Something has to give. I don't know whether, if it continues at the rate it's going, we have 5 years because as more and more people get angry, you know, the lines getting long, people not getting money, they're not feeding their kids. One of the things that's helping this country is the money that you and I are sending home. Imagine if these remittances were not going. I mean, they'll be eating human being raw. I'm telling you. Because human beings have all kinds of tendencies that you really cannot predict.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, you will soon find that these remittances now, people will start crossing the border to go pick up their money in Sierra Leone. People will start crossing the border to go pick up their money in Guinea in order for them to survive, because life has to go on. So it doesn't look very good, and it's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen. So don't even think about 5 years down the road. We just heard that the IMF has given some over $40 million worth of loan.
Yep.
We don't know, and they're saying that can only last for 2 months in terms of salary, you know. So that's just a drop in the bucket. But it seems we're hearing, we just heard that Sierra Leone just got over $400 million in the MCC. All about
free money.
Yeah, all
confidence.
About the indicators.
MCC.
I've been talking about some of the indicators, and their indicators they're not great, but it's moving in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Okay, when you do your appointment, these people go and then they go and Google all these people background. What school did they go to? Where did they work? I mean, what's their something? And then they look at some of the people. They say, "Oh, the other man was in jail in so place." And then, but then he is the friend of this person. Oh, really? Okay. And they'll just smile with you, and they're not really supporting you. So I don't know how we need to say this thing.
Yeah.
You know, for people to get it.
Thank you.
You know, so basically, in short, the leadership over there has to make some hard decisions. There are certain names, 2, 3 good people. Once you announce those names, you will see the confidence level will start rising, the inflation rate will start going down, money will start coming back into the banking system, and it will start speaking out. Here are the solutions. We're going to be rolling out this solution over X number of time, and
Thank you.
The core variables will begin to change. The economy is not rocket science.
Thank you.
It's just practical. It's like, you know, you have to, because the thing is that, I mean, confidence is not, and leadership is not something tangible that people can really look at. It's about track record. And you bring the people with good record, you know, you will see confidence begin to return, and things will begin to go in different directions. This is not about who is in which party and which is in which party whatsoever. If we can't build the economy, there will be no party to even talk about.
Yep.
You see?
Yep.
So I hope I didn't get too complicated, but I'm basically saying in short, they need to take steps to build confidence in the system. That all those money sitting out there, those people don't enjoy keeping millions of dollars in their houses. Yep. It's very risky. Those houses can burn at any time. You see? So they're not enjoying it.
Yeah.
They want to bring their money back into the system, but they have no confidence when people, you know, go and stand in line all day. The man is hungry, want to feed his kids, and you telling him that, oh, my man, I can only give you $5 or something, or there's no money here, and you're not even giving him a date. Then he goes back and informs his entire community. You know, so let's do the things that let the system do the things that are necessary to build confidence and to reduce the uncertainty, and the system can turn around.
Mr. Jones, you said you don't like to give solutions anymore. They should just fire them.
My solution is you bring a person like Carter as finance minister, or Dwalu, or Dr. Gompu, or Willie Dino, and I can give you 100 other names. And that's your solution. You don't get people who don't understand, who don't have practical experience. They don't understand these things we're talking about, because they don't, getting your MBA today is like getting candy. They go and get some of them need to get their money back from the school they went to. They don't understand simple finance. They never ran any business. They never ran any bank. They never worked at a bank. And then you take them and put them at the central bank. That's a disgrace. Then you expect any one of these people here to go work under them or give them advice. They're financial idiots. And unless you move the finance minister, we've destroyed the Liberia economy, all right, and the confidence that Dr. Gompu is talking about, you get rid of the central bank governor and you bring in a team of Liberians who have the credibility and the respect so they can reorganize Liberian commercial banks, there's no hope. And let me tell you something, because any one of these people, the difference is, first of all, if I hear the argument that the government goes into the commercial bank and takes money. If I'm a bank president and Samuel Tuer calls me and asks me for money that he doesn't have, the first thing I go on and do a press conference and I letting the public know what he said. You have to fiduciary duties to your depositors. And if you don't have the balls, to be a bank president to tell the finance minister, no, you shouldn't be in that capacity.
Thank you.
So those are the kind of people we need in Liberia. Or you a central bank governor and George Weah calls you and say he needs money to travel and he doesn't have the account, you should tell him no. We see that here. Or else, like I said, Dr. Gombo was mentioning that we don't have 5 years, unfortunately. We don't. The country got over $1 billion debt, 17% inflation, negative growth, no reserve, foreign trade deficit. What do you have? And you got these people, and again, like I said, this is not a political discussion. This is an economic discussion. This is about the future, not just you or your country. Soon we'll start seeing 200% inflation, and soon it will start seeing capital flight, and then it's over. So, we're not begging these people and telling you, oh, go hire this person. The reason why we are suggesting bring the right people in at the top. That will not and should not go and work on us. But the man doesn't know anything about finance. So you want a job done, then this is not just for the Weah administration. This is for any administration, okay, in Liberia or political party. You bring professionals in and you let them do the job. Like you mentioned, Joe Biden. Joe Biden not picking people from his party. He's looking for the best people. So, I hate talking to idiots. Actually, people say they go to school, but most of them, they really need to go and get their money back. Because no educated person will self-defeat themselves. You have interest in Liberia. You have houses in Liberia, right? Your family live in Liberia. Then you're wrecking the economy. What kind of stupidity is that? The reason why we're so passionate is because we want to invest in Liberia.
Thank
I
you.
just got a call from a friend who just invited me to Sierra Leone. Yeah, I'll go to Sierra Leone. I'd rather go there where people have civilization and banking sense than go to Liberia. I don't have to go there. And none of us here have to go there. We do this thing just to help the people and to improve lives for other people. We don't need jobs for any one of these people. How much are you going to pay? $1,500 a month? So it's enough. They're not getting any. I go and write a paper for why the tour and the law shows. Those are financial idiots. They don't have the experience. They don't have the credibility. That's the truth. No financial person can tell me on this platform here that these people are competent to even run a division in a commercial bank in America or anywhere in the world, in Ghana. Why should they be on top? Then we should give them advice. They need to get the hell out, or then go down with the ship. Good story. I will live, So no, thank you guys, and I really appreciate you guys for coming up, because most of Liberians, they say they won't be in politics. They say they love their country. You're having a crisis. They won't have the nerve to come up. Why? They want job in government. They want to be nice so they can get job and destroy the country. So I really, really respect you guys and more who are there saying what's best for the country and now what this politician want to hear. And we'll continue to do this.
Thank you. Mr. Dillon, go ahead. I want to read some comments, but you go first.
Yes, just wanted to add a comment to the question you asked Dr. Gompu as to what may happen if things continue along this trajectory, right? Yeah. We've seen this before. This happened in the U.S. in the 1930s with the Great Depression. It led to the greatest, economic contraction that they had in the history of their country. There was a run on the banks. Once the people lost confidence in the banking sector in this country, everybody ran for the money. All the banks collapsed. And when the banks collapsed, the economy collapsed. And that was it. So, everything in history happens in cycles. And, we study the history in order to learn from it and to ensure that we don't make the same mistakes in the future. So we are heading along a path where if the right decisions are not made, this could lead to, a banking crisis. And if the banking sector collapses, the economy collapses.
That's right.
Let me read a few comments. You respond to the comments, and then we can have your closing comments. Moba said, I'll blame Mauritius, Madagascar, Botswana, the list go on. Stop asking questions and listen to the experts talking. Is this tour in disguise? Who gets a truck driver as finance minister? Jimmy Eastman, this is the beginning of a liquidity crisis. If not reversed, there will be a spike in black or alternative markets, which will lead to a loss of critical revenue. More blame other countries are controlling their own. Other countries are controlling their own economy. Do you see them begging for rice, or do you see them lining up for Indian men to feed them for 30 days? Dave Jha, how do you deal with the influence of international institutions whose interests may not be in line with what the country truly needs? Jimin again, the mindset is anybody can run these institutions. That's wrong. Some institutions require high technical knowledge. You can't wing it. In all the high technical areas in Liberia, you will find that foreigners have filled the void. Dave Jai again, since our system is largely controlled by politicians, Liberian professional technocrats have to overwhelm the political structures of the country. In a single and organized fashion, those technocrats and intellectuals should work together and take over a selected political institution. Hopefully, when that group gains political power, then the system can be altered. What your takes? Let me give you. Let me read the last one from Joe Moyu. The banking and finance club needs to pivot to problem solving, put solutions on paper, and send them formally to the IMF and other development partners, and of course, copy the Liberian government. This has become a mission-critical crisis that the WIA government cannot handle. This is a crisis that, if not addressed, could evolve into an unstable situation. Dualo, your take to all the comments.
You're on mute.
All right, let me go to Gabriel.
Dualo, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm on mute. The brother who's talking about overwhelming the system with technocrats, I've begun proposing something. If he has time, he can Google the $1 billion challenge. We are putting forth something. We have to change this country. We cannot allow our country to go in this direction as continue to go in. Something has to be done. But I want to speak to what Alex says something about. Look, if you're working somewhere, and especially in a governance setting, where you are not able to tell your supervisors no, or you're not willing to walk away because they won't agree to the sign of advice you're giving them, I recommend you leave, because this is not a place for you. If you're a manager, you cannot hire subordinates who can tell you the truth. You will fail. You must hear the truth, because until we start building these kind of institutions in Liberia, it's not going to work. The issue is about Liberia. I don't care about your feelings. I don't love no political leader. I don't love anybody but my wife and 3 kids. My issue here is Liberia must be put on the path. I mean, look at our country. It's not that we're not able. We are equally capable. It got nothing, look, it got nothing to do about job. It's about fixing the country, because everybody benefits. And my take here is pay attention. It got nothing to do with party. Find the right people. Don't involve me. I'm a businessman. I look for my business on the side. I will eat 3 times a day. But the people that we can provide job for, you're strangulating them with these ridiculous policies. Until those policies change, you will get more hungry people. And the more hungry people, like Brother Willie said, create sovereignty risk issues. And those issues will come to harm all of us.
Mr. Carter, your take on the comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody is doing a great job at, identifying the problems that we have in Liberia. We've given out, diagnosed the problem, given out solutions. And for me, I think the hammer has to come from above, right? If you're having a problem, that means is one, a leadership problem and a technical problem, right? So with the money crisis in Liberia, it has to do first at the central bank, and everything flows down the hill from there, because they set the tone of what happens in the country. The fact that even Alex was saying that the central bank is going to commercial banks to borrow money from them, they're going against one of their regulations. They have an emergency liquidity assistance regulation that these commercial banks, if they're having liquidity problem, is supposed to go to the central bank to get liquidity.
Yep.
If you're supposed to give me money and I'm coming to you to borrow to get money, that tells you the crux of the problem and how bad it is, right? And these central banks, these commercial banks, that's when they're supposed to raise the alarm. Like this is something fundamentally happening here within our economy that we don't understand. That these regulators that's supposed to be giving us money in our emergency are now coming to us to borrow money, right? And for me, I think the problem is from the top. If you're having a central bank problem, a liquidity problem, an economy that's crumbling, like people can't even get money out of the bank. Like people are leaving from here to Liberia and taking money with them. Like I just have a few friends that left from here. I told them, listen, there's no money in the country. Take your money with you. If you have up to 10,000 to take with you, take that money with you. If the situation was different, they could have transferred that money into the bank, right? There's banking fees that would have been, they would have been collecting, and that would have helped boost the economy, right? Yeah. But we don't have that, So the problem here is from the top of the problem. The central bank governor, I don't know who they have as governor right now. Samuel Tuer, I don't know why he even interjecting himself in the central bank role. It's supposed to be an institution by itself, void of politics, right? So we're mixing everything and we expect these things to work. So for me, I don't want to keep, beating down a dead horse. This is a leadership problem that needs to be like immediately addressed. The president needs to call an emergency meeting, say all the commercial banks in the country, including the finance minister, and really diagnose this problem. Because if not, I think Willie alluded to that. We're going to get into probably the biggest financial crisis we've ever seen in Liberia history. We're headed towards that right now. So for me, it's a leadership problem, and it needs to be addressed immediately before things get even worse.
Like yesterday, CZ Siafa said Liberia runs a cash economy and no bank cards or electronic transaction. Consequently, there is no way to track point-to-point transaction or trends in the economy. And he also said import substitution by producing chickens, rice, etc. is discouraged by relatively high import tariffs. When one compares the tariff of neighbors in West African sub-region, exports from Liberia are discouraged by high tariffs, compared to the neighbor, and he called that the dissonance and incoherence in synchronizing monetary and fiscal policy. He said that's our problem.
Yeah.
Fanjai Basaka say all this big talking doesn't change anything for corrupt government. Emmanuel K. Ure, I would be surprised if the regulations of banks in Liberia are implemented. Liberia is a country that does not implement its laws.
Yeah.
The day Liberia starts to implement its law, improvement will start in all aspects. Basaka again said, our problem is transparency and non-procedure for implementation. Stop stealing and we will get our house in order. Alice, respond to that, and then we will get your closing comments.
Dennis, the questions, the better questions and analysis that I hear from most of our people that, talking. So I'm very impressed. But let me just address what Carter said. I got the question. The reason why, when you say the leadership problem, the reason why you have a finance minister there for 2 years and he cannot be removed is because of these things we're talking about. Because they've been borrowing, going into the central bank, into the commercial banks, and taking money whenever they need it. What the commercial banks are doing in Liberia, they go out to these investors outside of the country. These investors come and buy shares in the bank because they're not making any money. I looked at the balance sheet, all 9 of them. And most of them pull a run, So it's a whole cahoot going on. And now what they're going to do, you listen to me, they're going to find money from somewhere in the budget to ease that problem, right? So again, that's the whole economics. And then another problem 6 months from now, going to be even worse. Because they are the problem. They don't have the capable people there, and they're running a political institution called the financial economic. That's the truth. Don't go and, any sound professional person would not touch it because your reputation will be on the line. And they do not want to solve the problem. What they want you to go and help them get all of the whole dug for themselves. And these political parties, they are the same. They would never talk about the financial system and all these different problems. What they just want you keep quiet, just help them. No, we're not going to help you. You created your problem, you solve your problem, you know, you want to change, then that's a different thing. Then you have to bring people and not tell them what to do. You have to bring people that now your friends, your brother, your political, what you call, then that's you be talking about serious people. And lastly, Greece just went through the same problem, remember?
Yeah.
In 2010,
Yep.
the political leaders, when they hit the country's loans, billions of dollars
Cyprus.
in loans, what happened to Greece? Greece went, it collapsed. It's still recovering 10 years later.
Yep.
You know, I'm very familiar with it. Now they have to sell the Greek islands. They took over what $300 million from the IMF and other banking institutions around the world. So basically, you have a sovereignty issue in Greece. The EU even want to kick them out. And this is a country, the cradle of democracy. And you talking about Liberia, some shit old country. Seriously, you know, the bottom line is that listen, the people are not serious. They don't want professional people. They want stooges. And they're not just from the government, from the opposition too. Why aren't the senators out there having press conference, bringing their economic advisors,
Thank you.
hiring people like
Yeah.
you guys and say, look, come and help us craft a policy? We've written about these things. They don't even read it. That's the truth about it. All the Liberian politicians, they're not serious people. They want. The only point is let George Weah move and let come there.
Mhm.
And so, and then last one that Dave John made a very good point. We do need to gang out because we do have an interest in the country. We do it, and that's what we're doing here. And thanks to people that focus because they will bear off from everywhere else. We keep coming until people get the truth. That's what we're here for, and this is evident.
Mr. DeLong, we're talking solutions now, and here are some of the solutions that were provided previously. One was dig hole, cover hole. Two, borrow initiatives. Three, the unconventional means of closing that or solving the same liquidity problem by giving the money to money changer. That was unconventional. And then another solution came with harmonization. You were saying all these things didn't fix it, and you are giving us solutions tonight.
The question to me, I assume, is that you want more solutions or you want my response to those solutions that were given?
Those solutions were put forward. Are you saying they didn't work and that's why you're giving new solutions today?
Well, it's evident, man. You can look at the economy now and see that whatever solutions or ideas that were put forth at the beginning of this administration have not worked. And to me, that doesn't mean that it's completely fair. That means that they have to try harder, not in the same direction, because if you keep doing the same thing and getting the same result and you continue down that path, then that's the definition of insanity. But I do think that we need to move in a totally different direction. And, the problem with the liquidity crisis or the inflation in the country is all tied to the economy as a whole. These are just different. It's like a dragon that has different heads. It's all tied to what Dr. Gumper was talking about as far as the economy as a whole. And once the economy isn't working properly, you have a confidence issue. So, there are many things that can be done, even with the inflation situation in the country, where prices are going up in the country. There is something called disinflation, and disinflation is you can take the prices that are escalating, they can come back down. How do you solve that in the economy? In the economy, when you're doing that, you have to work on the unemployment rate. The more the unemployment rate goes down, the inflation goes down as well. So there are solutions to these problems. But if you're trying something and it's not working, you have to be in tune with the economy. First, you have to know what needs to be done. You have to be in tune with what's going on. So if this is the problem, you guys apply the right solutions. But as been said here before, a lot of the people who are in these very sensitive positions may not have the know-how. So, and then they're hired by their friend, so they know that they're not going to lose their job.
Right.
So you don't have that incentive to work harder or to come up with the right solutions. But that is affecting millions of people. That's affecting a whole country. So leadership is about, being in tune with your people and feeling their pain. So the tone at the top to me, has to look at the entire situation, put the right people in place so that we can attack all of these problems to move forward. That's my closing point of view.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I want to thank you so much for your time. During the show, there was a comment here saying, why are there all men, no ladies? So ladies, we encourage you to please get in touch with us. We always want people to take part. And so before I let you go, I give each of you 26 seconds with your closing statement, and we're going to close the broadcast tonight. I really appreciate your time, and I don't want to hold you any longer. 15 seconds, Mr. Jones. Let's start with you.
We'll start charging by the hour. Okay. But clearly, no, there's no other solution that you need to remove completely the whole entire management team of the Ministry of Finance, Commerce, and the Central Bank. They're incompetent. You can give them the textbook, you can give them the answer. They just aren't people who have been doing this sort of. These are munyamuyam people for the most part, or mediocre. When you send me a man like Carter's, when you inform me about him, I reach out, I check his background. You don't become an assistant vice president at a U.S. bank if you haven't been practicing banking for at least 10 years. Okay? Somebody like DeLong is a forensic accountant. Okay? You have the best and brightest financial economic people who are Liberians. And then you take the stupid ones and you put them in position, and then you want result, then you want people to come and give you solutions. You out of your minds. It doesn't work that way. Two, going forward, the only recommendation I will make, the financial and economic sector of Liberia should not be politically motivated going forward. No finance minister should ever be appointed again in the history of Liberia, right, based on politics or come from a political party and central bank. They should be vetted by the peers.
Thank you.
And if the peers say they're good, then those are the people you select from. That's how it's done in any modern, serious place. Because those areas are very technical. They're just like a medical doctor. You don't go and hire your political comrade to be a physician or to run a hospital. Why will you go and take your political comrade and make him Minister of Finance or central bank governor?
Thank you.
So that's the only recommendation I will make. Again, thank you very much. We'll continue to compound this issue. TUA should go. Our friends with CDC people, our friends with everybody, but TUA must go. I agree with Henry Costa on that one. TUA must go.
Thank you. That will be for another topic. Let's start on the commercial bank. This, Mr. Carter, your final thoughts, 20 seconds.
Yeah, and again, thank everybody for being on the show. I think no one person can solve any problem in Liberia, right? Even if they took any of us here, they put us at the top of the central bank, right? What a good leadership does is, I may not be good in certain area, but I'm confident enough that I can bring people around me that will not just make me better, but accomplish what I want to do, right? But we don't have that we don't have that currently in the at the central bank or even at the Ministry of Finance, right? We have a guy who just talks and he's good at. He can sell water to the ocean, right? So when he talks all these talk, people get excited, but in reality, he doesn't have the technical know-how, right? For me, I think from a solution standpoint, I think what the president should do, or even the governor, people that oversee the central bank, they should call an emergency meeting right now, right? This is a serious problem. This is the sovereignty of a country, entire country that is at hold. You call an emergency meeting and highlight some of these problems that we just laid out here. Those are the problems. And in addition to highlighting them, you give our solution. And if you identify that the governor or the finance minister is part of the problem, which we all know he is, you take him out and bring somebody else in. And if you think that the entire team is causing a problem, you wipe out everybody and bring new faces in, new people into to at least change a new tire on this car to keep it running a little bit until you figure out what's really wrong with it to get this thing going. But we're not doing that, And for me, that's the thing that angers everybody. We're frustrated, we're angry about it because that's the only country we get to go back to. If anything's wrong with it, in as much as we're making noise here, it impacts all of us. We're stuck in America for forever. Right. Yeah. So that's why we're pressing these things to make sure that things get done. But the solutions are there. the problems are there, the solutions are there. They just the will of the people to actually put them into action to make sure that things get done. That's what's plaguing us. So again, thank you for having me. Thank you for meeting everybody on the show. Alex, Dylan, and the other two gentlemen that were here. I look forward to connecting with you all. Thank you.
Yeah, our next topic will be on the central bank, so we will invite all of you back.
Perfect.
Dylan, your final words.
Yes, I'm in step with what these gentlemen have said. The crazy thing is that the central bank really is, according to the law that have been established, decoupled from politics. Supposed to be, but I really do think that we have to allow ourselves to truly implement the laws that we have on the books instead of just putting them on the books. And then at the end of the day, we get money from these international institutions, and then we just continue doing the same thing over and over in Liberia. Put the right people in the right places, and make sure that they're technocrats. They understand what they're doing, and they execute things based on the Liberian situation. And that's not being done. And if we cannot do that, we won't see real progress in our country, And like I said, I also want to tell you guys, thank you, man, for having me on here today. It's my first time, and I enjoyed the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. And we want to thank our viewers and even those that will watch later on. Keep your dial set here. At 6 o'clock, we're going to have Mr. Emmanuel Savas, the leader of LUJA, that's the Liberians United for Justice. He will be here to talk about the War and Economic Crime Court and has it relate to the elections, the referendum, everything else in between. I want to thank you all for coming. Thank our viewers. We don't close without playing our theme song or our closing song that says, "We are all Liberians." I really want to go back to Sino. My dream job is still the superintendent of Sino. But with the economy, we can go, man. I mean, I left that place when I was a kid. I want to see how the place goes. I want to live there. Beat dumb boy in the mother and eat it. Bitter root. I want to go, but the country needs to do better, and we are all willing to help. So no matter who you are, whether you are for, against, or in the middle, we are all Liberians. Let's do the best we can to keep our country that glorious land of liberty we all hope for. Until then, my name is Dennis Johnson. Goodbye, and God bless you.
God bless you all.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.